All right, so Joe Biden is set to announce tomorrow on Wednesday that apparently the United States is now finally going to be completely withdrawing from Afghanistan. So obviously when I first saw this news, my initial gut reaction was bullshit. That is bullshit. I don't believe you. We've heard this before. I mean, we have literally heard it from the lips of Joe Biden himself. VP on Afghanistan, this is back from 2012. 2012. We've been in Afghanistan almost 2 decades now. VP on Afghanistan, we will leave in 2014. So obviously, my first reaction when hearing the news that apparently Joe Biden is announcing we're fully leaving Afghanistan by September 11th. Obviously, I had my doubts when hearing this news and reading some of these articles that were written by some of these mainstream press outlets. Really just reaffirmed my belief that this is either a completely false and misleading headline, as we're going to see in some of the details as to how they write this, or it's just not really going to happen how they say it's going to happen. We've heard this over and over and over again. All these politicians ever do when they say we're going to finally end the wars is they pull down the troop levels a little bit. This is what Obama did. This is sort of what Trump did. You pull down the troop levels a little bit, and then whoops, some big attack happened, and now we gotta resend in a bunch of troops. And so they yo-yo the troop levels, and we never actually end the wars. And it looks like, if we get into the details here, that that's exactly what this is. So President Joe Biden, having concluded there is no military solution to the security and political problems plaguing Afghanistan, and determined to focus on more pressing national security challenges, will formally announce Wednesday that U.S. troops will withdraw from the country before the 20th anniversary of the September 11th terror attacks, a senior administration official says. So, reading this first headline, you might think, wow, this is good news. It looks like he may be breaking with this mentality that these other people have had with these conditions-based withdrawal agreements, but that's not actually the case. So here's what they say. The official said that unlike past efforts to set a U.S. withdrawal date, Biden's deadline was not conditions-based. So seems good, right? Seems like Biden is just saying, listen, I know the situation is pretty much fucked no matter what we do, so we might as well pull out because it's not our country. We went in there on ridiculous premises in the first place. It's not a war we should have ever started, so maybe we should just leave and give humanitarian aid where possible, but maybe we should just leave without trying to form some complicated agreement that isn't actually going to work out. So I read this and I was like, wow, this actually might be something good. But then they go on to say, the president has judged the conditions-based approach, which is the approach of the past 2 decades, is a recipe for staying in Afghanistan forever, and so he has reached the conclusion that the United States will complete its drawdown, will remove its forces from Afghanistan before September 11th, the senior official said, but U.S. officials say there are about 2,500 troops in Afghanistan. The U.S. isn't planning to withdraw completely. As the senior administration official said, some troops will remain in the country to provide diplomatic security, though the exact number has not yet been decided. In addition, it's not immediately clear what will happen to several hundred U.S. Special Operations Forces that often work for the CIA on counterterrorism missions. Those troops are not publicly acknowledged and are not part of the formal calculation of 2,500 troops in the country. So, what? The U.S. isn't planning to withdraw completely as the senior administrator. Well, which one is it? You just laid out the entire argument as if Joe Biden was actually going to remove troops completely, and then you say, well, it's not actually all of the troops, and by the way, some of these other troops, we don't really include those in the calculations, and oh, by the way, we're actually not removing all of it. What the fuck? How is this article written? This is one of the most confusing articles I've ever read in my entire life. And in addition to that, we've obviously seen the recent articles trying to justify further military occupation in Afghanistan, and these were ridiculous as well. Pentagon could open itself to costly litigation from contractors if it pulls out of Afghanistan this year, trying to push Joe Biden to not pull out of Afghanistan. What a fucking ridiculous headline. Pentagon could open itself up to costly litigation from contractors. You know what this is saying? This is an open and brazen admission that our foreign policy agenda is dictated by the military-industrial complex. That is exactly, almost word for word, what this is saying right here. Pentagon could open itself up to costly litigation from contractors. Why the fuck are contractors determining our foreign policy? I mean, they are, and I kind of appreciate the honesty in that sense, but what a ridiculous article to write. that we should dictate whether or not we pull out of this endless war based on whether or not contractors are going to sue us? What are you talking about? And then there was another article that came out that was talking about this. Concerns mount that U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan could risk progress on human rights, on women's rights. As if the reason why we got into Afghanistan was for women's rights. And listen, I'm not trying to say that there wouldn't be a backlash if we were to fully pull out of Afghanistan. Maybe there would be some sort of backlash on women's rights. But the point is, that's not why we are there. So to pretend as if that's the only reason why we are staying in Afghanistan is ridiculous, okay? We're best friends, we're best buddies with Saudi Arabia, where they commit horrific abuses against women in that country. So that's obviously not the intention of the U.S. government in this circumstance. It's not to protect women's rights. So we've been seeing these bullshit articles come out recently, trying to push Joe Biden to stay in Afghanistan, trying to push us past the May 1st deadline of withdrawal that Trump set up, trying to continue this indefinite military occupation. And all of the arguments they've been laying out have been bullshit. But, you know, seeing an article like these, right, on the withdrawal and using the language that they're using, and I mean, look at this headline. Biden will withdraw all U.S. forces by September 11th. So that's the standard that they're trying to sell you on. But then again, like we just saw in the CNN article, do you mean all the forces? Or do you not mean all the forces? Because this one is saying the U.S. isn't actually planning to withdraw completely. So which one is it? We don't know. And I think that's kind of part of the problem here, is that this isn't necessarily going to be a real withdrawal plan. But continuing on, this was another thing that I thought was interesting in just how they were framing this entire issue. So they say the goal is to move to 0 troops by September, the senior administration official said, quote, "This is not conditions-based again. The president has judged that a conditions-based approach is the recipe for staying in Afghanistan forever. He has reached the conclusion that the U.S. will complete its drawdown and remove its forces from Afghanistan before September 11th. So seems pretty clear-cut. Again, we don't really know because there's been conflicting statements on this. But listen to how they frame this. In addition to major domestic challenges, the reality is that the U.S. has a big strategic interest in the world. The person familiar with deliberations said, like non-proliferation, like an increasingly aggressive and assertive Russia, North Korea, and Iran. I would obviously disagree with that framing. I would think that the United States is far more of an aggressor, given that we have troops stationed all across the fucking Middle East, right up on the borders of Iran. How are you going to say Iran is the aggressor when we are the ones illegally sanctioning them? We are the ones who assassinated their Qasem Soleimani, one of their top generals. We are the ones stationing military bases and troops all around the country. How the fuck are you going to say that we're not the aggressor, that Iran is the aggressor? Okay. But that's what they say, whose nuclear programs pose a threat to the United States, again, bullshit, as well as China. The main threats to the American homeland are actually from other places, from Africa, from parts of the Middle East, Syria, and Yemen. We should not be in Syria. We should not be in Syria, just like we should not be in Afghanistan. There's no legitimate justification for us to be in Syria. And in Yemen, so you're saying we need to divert more priority to Yemen. The priority that we need to be diverting to Yemen is to tell Saudi Arabia to stop conducting a fucking genocide. That's what we should be moving our priorities to in Yemen. We are facilitating, we are helping fund, arm, and facilitate a genocide in Yemen. And they talk about like, oh yeah, we have other problems going on here in Syria and Yemen that we should be focusing on. Okay, I hope you're focusing in the right ways. But they also say, you know, in other parts of the Middle East and in Africa. This is disturbing to me, this language that they're using here, that we have greater security threats now in Africa, apparently, over the Middle East. Because this tells me that what they're really aiming to do is do the same thing, use the same strategies that they used in the Middle East, now going more towards Africa. And that's a problem too, because we shouldn't be involved in these fucking countries, okay? They're not our countries. Just because we're the most powerful nation across the world doesn't mean we just get to go walk into any country that we want and dictate how they use their resources and dictate their cultures and dictate these governments and install dictators where we like. This isn't how this is supposed to work, okay? We shouldn't have a foothold in all of these different places, but we do. And they talk about this. I mean, I just think that the framing of this is amazing, because what they're basically saying is we are trying to divert attention from Afghanistan so we can go do imperialism elsewhere. That's kind of the framing that they're giving here. So, with all of this put together, including this, obviously, but with all of this put together, it doesn't give me hope, okay? I'll be honest. I don't think that this is a legitimate withdrawal plan, okay? I don't believe, and I'm not going to believe this until I see it, I don't believe that Joe Biden is actually going to fully withdraw from Afghanistan. We've seen this trick played a million times before, and so I'm not going to let myself be duped by it. If I'm proven wrong, then I will be happy to be proven wrong. But as of what I'm seeing right now, I don't think this is legitimate. I don't think this is a serious withdrawal. I don't think he's going to fit the deadline, or if he does hit the deadline, it's going to be, with some half-assed measured response like, oh, we pulled down the troop levels even though we're leaving a couple thousand people that we just don't count as part of our troop level numbers. So that's what I think this is going to be. I don't think this is serious. But again, we need to get out of these wars. We need to not only get out of Afghanistan, but again, that doesn't mean go do imperialism in Africa, right? Okay, this is a general principle that we should apply across the board. It's not going to be easy to pull out of Afghanistan. And why is it not going to be easy? Well, it's not going to be easy because we went in there and fucked the country up. But that doesn't mean that our indefinite presence there is going to lead to a better outcome. So I think the default should be us not being in these countries and dictating how they're running. The default should not be indefinite military presence for all of these bullshit reasons that they have outlined before. We don't have a legitimate way to defeat the Taliban, okay? And so this is not a war that we're going to be able to win. So pull out, fully pull out, withdraw all of our troops and dismantle our military bases in the region. And don't be tricked by these bullshit narratives that they're pushing that this is somehow about women's rights or something. It's not. It's about geopolitical influence. It's about imperialism. It's about the military-industrial complex.